Hey guys, welcome to Baker Lady, and today I'm going to show you how to decorate a cake. Alright, so we're going to need a few things here. Don't worry if you don't have everything, we'll figure it out as we go. So we're going to need a spatula, a palette knife, a cake scraper, a piping bag and a piping tip, and we're also going to need some sprinkles. We're going to need a tray to catch those sprinkles, and of course our icing and a cake. This is a cake that we assembled and crumb coated in the last video. Before I start, I want to color my icing. Today I've got blue and brown. I like Chef Master. You can find it on Amazon and at various cake supply stores. Stick the paddle attachment onto your mixer and add a couple drops of whatever color you want to make. You can always add a couple drops more if you need to make it darker. So I'm going to make a robin's egg blue, so I'm going to start with a couple drops of blue, and I'm also going to add a couple drops of brown. This just kind of tones down the color and gives it a more muted look. So mix it on low speed, adding food color until you get the shade that you want. Don't forget to scrape down the sides of your bowl, as you'll see some unevenly mixed icing down there. Make sure you get all the way to the bottom where the paddle doesn't reach. This is a classic American buttercream recipe, the sweet frosting that's usually on a kid's birthday cake. I'll leave a link in the description for the video that shows how I make mine. Continue adding color and mixing until everything is combined and even. Tell me in the comments, if you were making a vanilla buttercream, would you keep it white or would you choose to color it? And which color would you choose and why? Scrape all the extra icing off of the paddle and give your bowl a last little scrape around. Make sure everything's all combined together. So here's the finished color. You can kind of see the toned down look that I was talking about earlier. Now that we've finished coloring our icing, we can move that aside while we grab our cake turner. This is a professional cake turner. If you don't have one, you can use a Lazy Susan or even a microwave turntable. I even used the bottom of a bowl to balance my cake on before. Bring out the cake from the fridge. We want to make sure the cake is cold so that it keeps its shape while we spread the frosting on. We are using a palette knife and a cake scraper for this part. Cake scrapers can be found at the cake supply stores. Mine was bought at the dollar store. However, all you need is something sturdy, food safe, and straight. By the way, if this tutorial has been helpful and straightforward for you, please consider liking and subscribing to see more videos just like this. It's finally time to cover the cake with icing. So we're going to start with a couple big scoops of our icing and put it right on top of the cake. This should be almost enough icing to cover your entire cake. I find 3 or 4 little spatulas full is good. Next, let's take our palette knife and we're going to place it just on top of the pile of icing. We're going to keep it parallel with the cake and we're going to spread out the icing in a whooshing motion, kind of rocking it back and forth so the icing stays underneath the palette knife. We're going to spin the cake at the same time to spread that icing all the way out to the edges. Now, as we spread, more and more icing will build up on the edge of the cake. And if we wait too long, those clumps will kind of just fall off. So at this point, once we get most of the icing spread out evenly on top, we're going to start working on the sides. We'll give it one more smooth over before we go ahead and move our palette knife down there. Push all that extra icing into the side of the cake while spinning it to cover the entire thing. We're not trying to make it look pretty right now, we're just trying to get it all covered. We are going to move back to the top of the cake now and continue spreading it out. We want to avoid having too thick a layer of icing on top of the cake. 1/4 of an inch is more than enough, so we're going to continue collecting that icing and pressing it into the side. So keep doing this until you've got it thin enough on top. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at the same time, people don't want a huge bite of just icing. And there's also going to be the icing decoration on top. Let's check how much icing is left on top. Just take your palette knife and scrape a small section in the middle of the cake to just see how far it takes to get down to the creme coat. As you can see, there's still quite a bit on there, and we can continue spreading a couple more turns until it's a little thinner. If you see any little white spots, you know that you've hit the creme coat, and that means that it's time to stop. So cover that up a little bit and just spread it out nice and even. Check it one more time, and that looks perfect. So we'll spread that out so it's even again. Now we can focus all of our attention to the sides. Start the sides again by working from the top down, smoothing out the ridge that we made by spreading the extra icing out. Swooshing it back and forth like a wave, just like we did on top. Spin the cake at the same time to spread all of the icing. Continue spreading until it covers the entire cake. We are still not trying to make the sides look pretty. We are solely trying to get the icing covered on the entirety of the cake, and we will work on straightening it out after. I'm just going to get a little more icing from the bowl to cover up that white spot that I uncovered, and we'll move on to the straightening part. The cake is covered in icing, and now it's time to smooth it out. This is a fine cake, by the way. If you want to stop here, add some candles, you're good to go. But we are going to clean our spatula and straighten this baby out. Instead of rocking our spatula back and forth, we're going to keep it straight instead. Hold it up and down against the cake and spin the cake turner. Slowly bring your palette knife all the way up to the top, and this is going to do two things. This is going to start the smoothing process, and it's going to bring all the extra icing up to the top and give us this little ridge around the top. So as you can see here, you can see the edge is kind of raised above the top of the cake, and that's going to allow us to cut the icing in and give us a nice clean edge. Before we do that though, we're going to straighten the side out more and smooth it out with our cake scraper. Take the cake scraper and we're going to place it next to the cake, flat with the icing board. If you bend your cake scraper forward or backwards, your cake will not be straight. So just remember to touch the cake board with your cake scraper the whole time. Even a plastic cutting board cut to size would work as a scraper. So place your cake scraper on the cake board flat, touching the side of the cake. Spin the cake board so that the scraper collects the extra icing, allowing the cake to smooth out as you go. Some people like to spin the cake like this, but I don't like the lines it gives. So instead, I prefer to reach around the cake and slowly spin it with one motion, allowing my cake to smooth out. Once you get to this point, you can see that your cake is relatively straight. You've got a nice 90-degree angle from the cake board, but what you do see is a couple little air bubbles and pockets and blemishes where the icing maybe was a little shallow in that area. So we can just keep going and spinning, and the extra icing on the scraper will fill in most of those little air pockets. There may be some spots that you need to add a touch more icing to, just to have enough icing there to scrape off to get to the same level as the rest of the smooth icing. So I'm just doing that here. I'm filling in one little extra spot on top that had a little air pocket that I couldn't get rid of. It's funny how the same skills can apply to different jobs. Like, I was watching my husband finish some drywall the other month, and he's got his mud and his knife there that he's going back and forth and filling in the little holes and cracks, and cleans off his knife again with his scraper, and it's exactly what I'm doing with this cake here. Let's smooth it out a few more times until we're happy with the finished look. You can go back and forth between smoothing it out with a scraper and filling it in with the palette knife as many times as you like. But there will be a time that you need to decide to stop. At the end of the day, any little holes or cracks or crevices can always be covered up with decorations. It's not perfect, but it's perfect enough. And you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. All it has to be is delicious. If you've tried and you're still not happy with the way the sides look, and you're like, I don't want to serve this cake, don't worry, there's options. Number one, cover the entire thing with sprinkles. You know, it might be a little crunchy, but it's a way to cover up anything that you don't want. The second option is what we're gonna do right now, and we're gonna take the very end of the palette knife, and we're going to place that against the cake, starting at the bottom, and we're slowly going to spin the cake as we keep the palette knife in place, slowly sliding it up the cake. And as we do this, we're going to keep going around until you get to the top. And once we hit that edge that we want to cut off to give the clean top of the cake, we're going to stop. When doing a cake like this, it's still a good idea to smooth it out as we did before so that you have that nice 90-degree angle on your cake. Our cake looks good. Now it's time to get the top finished. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean our spatula off very well with our scraper. We're just going to make sure there's no icing left on any of the edges so that we can get a nice clean cut. So we're going to do that. And let's take our palette knife and we're going to start right at the very edge where the top of the cake is. And we're going to just cut that icing into the center. Again, we're going to scrape our palette knife off, making sure it's completely clean. And then we're going to turn the cake a bit and cut it again. And as you can see in the center, it's not going to be completely even, but we'll finish that off when we're done this. Right now, we want to just get the edges as clean as possible so that our cake is nice and level and flat when we go to add the final decorations. As I said before, you got to make sure that your palette knife is nice and clean, or you'll get a couple little edges when you go to clean that cake off and it won't be straight. Now we can just lightly pass over the top with the palette knife to smooth out that entire top and give it a nice clean look. We can now move on to final decorations. So we are going to clean up our palette knife, our scraper, and we're going to put that icing back, and we'll move on to the sprinkles. Let's set our cake aside, and we're gonna pull out that tray that we called for in the supplies. And this is just gonna help you keep your workstation a little cleaner because, as you know, sprinkles can get everywhere. We're gonna use a rainbow sprinkle here. If you're looking on Amazon or at cake stores, they're called jimmies. They're the long, skinny sprinkles that you see everywhere. Take a paper towel and clean the cake board all the way around to get all the extra icing that's been left on there. It's gonna stop the sprinkles from sticking to your cake board and making a complete mess. Pick up your cake and we're gonna hold it over the tray while we start to add the sprinkles on. You can add it with your hands. I'm gonna use a spoon because I have a small jar, and I'm gonna just kind of scoop it onto the side of the cake, and I'm gonna take my hands and I'm gonna kind of press it onto the side just to get those loose sprinkles attached. And I'm gonna continue going around the cake and doing that until the complete border at the bottom is covered with as many sprinkles as I like. Once we're happy with how many sprinkles are on the side, we can start to just wipe the excess off of the cake board onto the tray to catch them. Be careful you don't put your cake on too much of an angle so that it doesn't fall off your cake board. All right, I'm happy with that, and I'm gonna place the cake down while I take my sprinkles away, and then we're going to put this baby in the fridge. That will let the top harden up so that we can place our finishing decorations on. Now we're going to prep our piping bag. So you're going to take your piping bag and you're going to cut the edge off so that the piping bag fits in, but it can't fall out. As you can see, the plastic is cut really close to the edge, but it's not covering any of the actual tip. For a complete tutorial on how to fill a piping bag properly, check out my YouTube channel at Baker Lady Sam. Twist the bag and stick it inside the piping tip so that your icing doesn't fall out when you try to fill it. Fold it over your hands about halfway, and you can start to scoop the icing in. Make sure you only fill it 1/3 to halfway full so that you have enough room in your bag to close it up afterwards. It will be easy not to overfill your bag if you indeed put the bag halfway over your hands. Once it's full, you can put your icing aside and flip the top up on your bag and give it a little twist. Once you squeeze your bag enough, you can see that the tip will pop right out and your icing will be ready to go. Set the bag aside while we make some room for our cake, and we will bring it back out from the fridge. There are a few different piping options we can use for the top of this cake. I've got a star tip on my piping bag. You can use any tip that you want to use, but this one's going to give us a couple options. So we can make stars. We can do rosettes. And we can make a birthday cake swirl. I think for our cake today, we're going to do the birthday cake swirls. So we're gonna start with our first one, and we're gonna put our piping bag straight up at a 90-degree angle from your cake. And we'll pipe a little icing out, and we'll slowly push as we wiggle the piping tip back and forth. And you wanna make sure that you don't make it too close to the edge. So step about 1/2 inch away from the edge when you start your birthday cake swirl. Do one on each side and then 2 more in between each. Okay, we've got all 6 done, and we're gonna look at it. But I don't like that first one that I did, so I'm just gonna take it right off. It's a mistake. And we're just gonna repipe it. Just take it off and do it again. And that looks much better to me. And last but not least, we're gonna finish the top with some more of those sprinkles. Sprinkle a few onto each birthday cake dollop. And we are good to go. And there you have it, folks. We have our finished birthday cake. Perfect enough for anybody's birthday celebration. My name's Sam, and I am the Baker Lady. Thanks for watching.
Please like and subscribe.